The week of silence. The war was over. Smoke still curled from the fields where once the clash of blades and the roar of dragons echoed. The ground bore the scars of battle, craters burned by fire, shards of ice glistening in the dawn light, and embers of light and darkness slowly fading into the wind. The 5 dragons, their duty fulfilled, ascended into the sky one final time. Their combined voices rumbled through the heavens, a hymn of both victory and farewell. As they vanished beyond the clouds, a quiet peace began to settle over the kingdom. Back in the palace, healers rushed through the marble halls, tending to the wounded. The once proud banners of the royal house were torn and blood-stained, yet still they waved, a symbol that the kingdom still stood. The dwarves and elves worked side by side with the soldiers of men, reforging what was broken. The king watched from the balcony, his armor still dented, his crown resting heavy on his brow. Beside him stood the dwarf king and the elven queen, their faces solemn but hopeful. "Rebuild every home," the king commanded softly. "Bury the fallen with honor. Let this day mark the rebirth of our world." In the palace chambers, Sophia sat at Mix's bedside. His body was wrapped in bandages, his breathing shallow but steady. The wound Hades had inflicted ran deep, not just through flesh, but through his spirit. His hand rested cold in hers, and every night she prayed he would open his eyes again. Clara visited often, bringing flowers from the garden. She would sit quietly beside Sophia, sometimes speaking softly to Mix, though he could not hear her. "You saved us all," she whispered one evening, tears falling. "But you have to come back, please." Outside, life slowly returned. Children played again in the courtyards, soldiers rebuilt the walls, and music, soft, uncertain at first, drifted through the streets. It was as if the world itself exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Yet inside the royal chambers, time stood still. Sophia hardly slept, refusing to leave Mick's side. The healers said he needed rest, but she could not bear to be far from him. He remembered his final words before falling, his promise that no darkness could ever take him from her. 7 days passed. Each dawn brought new light into the room. But Mix remained motionless. His face was peaceful, but pale, his once bright eyes closed to the world. The others began to lose hope, though none dared to say it aloud. On the 7th night, a soft breeze stirred the curtains. The candles flickered, and the faintest glimmer of light appeared around Mix's hand, the mark of the spear of Triumph, glowing faintly beneath his skin. Sophia gasped, clasping his hand tighter. "Mix?" she whispered. For a heartbeat, the air shimmered. The same ancient power that once called the dragons now surrounded him again. And as the glow faded, Mix's fingers twitched, his chest rose deeper. Sophia's tears fell as she leaned closer, her voice breaking. "Come back to me." And though faint, a voice escaped his lips, weak but alive. "Sophia?" The castle bells rang soon after, not for war, but for life, for hope, and for the rebirth of a hero who had given everything to save them all. Later that night, darkness, endless and cold, Mix found himself standing in a void, surrounded by whispers. The air was thick, heavy with dread. Then, out of the shadows, Sophia appeared. She was walking ahead of him, her hair flowing like a trail of light in the dark. "Sophia," he called out, his voice echoing in the emptiness. She didn't turn. She kept walking, her steps silent, as if drawn by something unseen, and then the air shifted. A dark shadow began to swirl around her, circling, consuming the light that surrounded her form. "Sophia!" Mix shouted again, breaking into a sprint. His feet pounded against the unseen ground, but no matter how fast he ran, she drifted further away. The shadow thickened, tendrils of darkness wrapping around her arms, her waist, her heart. He reached out, fingertips brushing the air, and then the world shattered. Mix gasped awake, his chest heaving. Sweat clung to his skin, his heart racing like thunder. "Sophia!" he cried, bolting upright. But he wasn't in the underworld anymore. He was back in his chamber. The soft glow of morning light spilling through the window. His vision blurred for a moment before settling on a familiar sight. Clara, sitting on the chair beside his bed, fast asleep, her head resting on her arm. It took him a second to realize Sophia wasn't there. She must have been resting, and Clara had been watching over him in her place. Mix leaned back, exhaling shakily. His body ached all over. As he turned his head, Clara stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw him awake, alive, her eyes widened with disbelief. "Mix," she whispered. He barely had time to answer before she leapt forward, wrapping her arms around him tightly. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she buried her face in his shoulder. Mix blinked in surprise, but slowly placed a weak hand on her back. "Clara, it's all right. I'm back now." She pulled away slightly, her eyes red and trembling with emotion. She touched his cheek gently, her fingers trembling. "You made me worry so much," she whispered, and before he could say a word, she leaned in and pressed a soft kiss against his cheek. Mix froze, stunned. Clara smiled faintly, though her eyes shimmered with tears. "Don't ever scare me like that again," she said softly, standing up quickly before the silence could deepen. I'll call Sophia." Mix watched her go, his thoughts a blur. That dream, that shadow. The way Clara looked at him, it all swirled in his mind like a storm he couldn't escape. Moments later, the door opened again. Sophia ran inside, her face lit with tears of joy. She rushed to Mix's bedside, falling to her knees beside him. "Mix, you're awake," she cried, grabbing his hand and pressing it to her heart. "I thought I'd lost you." He smiled faintly. "You could never lose me, Sophia. Not even death could take me away." Sophia laughed softly through her tears, wiping them away. Behind her, Clara returned, this time holding a small child in her arms. "Look who wanted to see you," Clara said gently. Mix's eyes softened the moment he saw him. Perseus sleeping peacefully, his little hand clutching a tiny cloth charm. Sophia leaned close, her eyes warm. "He missed you too." Mix's hand trembled as he reached out to touch his son's head. "I'm home," he whispered. "I'm really home." The room was filled with light and warmth, but inside Mix's mind, the image of that dream lingered. The dark shadow around Sophia, her fading voice calling out his name. He forced a smile for her sake, but deep down, a chill ran through his heart. Something wasn't right. And though he didn't yet understand what it meant, Mix knew one thing for certain. The darkness wasn't done with them yet.